Hello world, I am currently reaching out to you from Sao Paulo, Brazil. This series of videos is on market gardening, with this video being specifically on the topic of crop planting. This material is for gardeners, farmers, and horticulturalists. Way back when, during my military days, I learned the 7 Ps, which I have shortened to the 6 Ps here, as the original version may be offensive. Prior proper planning prevents poor performance. This phrase can be attributed to many scenarios, from the business or corporate world to vacations and especially to crop planting. This video is meant to break down crop planting in a way that is understandable to the masses. Many people are in the dark about how to plan harvest, and this is a stumbling block which can frighten some away from ever sowing a seed. Without further ado, the following slides will detail when to purchase and sow seeds, along with when to transplant and harvest crops. Purchasing seeds. Beyond bringing a tool's edge to the grindstone for sharpening and applying linseed oil to ash handles, one of a farmer's favorite winter pastimes is scouring through an assortment of seed catalogs, finding the best deal on tried and true cultivars, along with finding temptation with the newest trend crops. Seeds are not to be purchased at your local hardware store, instead at a reputable source whose sole mission is to bring high-quality seeds to growers. As the growing season is plagued with duties and time is severely limited, seed purchasing should occur during your local slow season. This generally will coincide with when seed providers have received newly threshed seeds, and when you have the time allowed to plan your farm's future. These seed orders should only occur after careful consideration. Look back on the past season. Did you face a disease or pest pressure in which a cultivar with certain resistances can be found? Did several clients comment on how they like or dislike a certain cultivar and wish you had a different one? What are your infrastructure limitations? Should you look into crops that need more or less trellis support, row cover, or greenhouse culture? Pelleted or unpelleted seeds can make a huge difference based upon your current operational procedures. And of course, the inevitable FOMO, or fear of missing out, in which there are hundreds of cultivars to choose from. Days to maturity, or DTM, is a term each grower should know. Yet this term can mean 2 very different things. DTM can either be the time from seeding to harvest, or from transplant to harvest. This information should be clearly indicated on the seed provider's website, catalog, or seed packet, but if not, you must use your best judgment. If you find that in general, sweet peas take 65 or more days to maturity, but then on some obscure seed provider website, you find a variety with a 40 DTM, question the information. Perhaps this isn't the quickest cultivar, but more likely a marketing scheme in which they are measuring the time from transplant to harvest instead of seed to harvest. When sowing a seed, there are numerous factors to keep in mind. First, you should understand the hardiness of your particular crop and what temperature germination is possible. Starting seeds in optimal conditions are always ideal, especially if the crop is to satisfy a contract. Yet if growing for a market or your own family, you can likely get away with more risk. You can find information on seed germination conditions in my other video on seed starting. For crops started in 1020 flats, which will ultimately be transplanted, it is important to understand the aforementioned aspects of cultivation, along with how long the crop can stay inside each cell without becoming root bound. Also, you must plan for a hardening off period based upon how tender your crops may be. You can see above that direct seeded DTM crops generally apply to salad greens, carrots, radishes, and so on, while most other vegetables will be represented with a post-transplant DTM. This is a great chart provided by Knott's Handbook for Vegetable Growers. In the footer, you can see 2 very helpful hints. First being that the time to market maturity, noted as DTM in the previous slide, is dependent upon the season, latitude, practices, cultivar, and other factors. This is a fault of biological production, in which you can't simply throw additional personnel hours at a problem. A grower must always keep this in mind and should be wary of setting exact dates for production schedules. Also, you will see that some crops, namely tomatoes in this screenshot, are given a DTM from transplanting, while the rest of the crops here are DTM from direct seeding. I personally would not direct seed cucurbits, such as the squash and watermelon listed here. But as always, this information is based upon the author's discretion. There is no correct way. It's simply the grower's preference. In general, the days to maturity number is determined under ideal conditions. A crop may take 40 DTM during the spring and 30 DTM during the summer, and will simply be listed as 30 DTM, in which you, the grower, must make proper assumptions. Transplanting should occur when the weather, the plants, and the harvest are all in agreement. This means the plant should enter the field either early morning or late afternoon. This decreases the chance of transplant shock, wilting, and death. Often seedling 1020 flats are germinated in an area with poor airflow and lots of moisture. This creates for weak seedlings, which being set into a hot and windy row will lead to a quick death. Beyond transplanting during a cooler time of day, overcast and rainy days are optimal. Prior to transplanting, the seedlings should be taken out of their comfortable germination area to harden off for several days. They should be watered prior to and after transplanting. And if you choose the right 1020 cell size for the correct amount of time, the seedling should pop out in a single piece without leaving any media in the cell, along with not being root bound or having encircling roots. Finally, you should transplant when your time to harvest aligns closely to your DTM, allowing some leeway if growing during cooler seasons or if your climate in general has a cool summer. When watering your transplants in, you should use a kelp or seaweed emulsion. These are organic friendly fertilizers which contain a broad range of nutrients and have been shown time and again to boost initial root growth, which is the major factor in successful transplanting. If you want to read up on this, you can search for this scholarly journal on your intertubes. When to harvest, the weather, plants, and your desired end state must be in agreement. While some crops aren't affected, in general, you will want to harvest during the early morning or late evening. And unlike with transplanting, dry conditions are best due to the chance of spreading bacteria or fungus during harvest. Each crop has its own unique prerequisites for harvest, and you may be harvesting romaine as a baby leaf, or wait for the plants to mature and harvest as a head of romaine. It is up to what you and your clientele desire. Finally, harvest as close to the time of sales as possible, ensuring freshness, and don't put that knife or trimmers to use until you know that your post-harvest infrastructure is clean and functional. I'm going to sum everything up here with this lengthy example that will not only show all the factors from seed to harvest of crop planting, but will show how much work a farmer completes during the off-season without pay. First, a farmer selects seed based upon what he or his clients desire, while ensuring the seeds are resistant to prevalent disease or pest pressures. Now, the farmer, working in reverse order, determines which day the crop must be mature in order to begin sales. Here, we are attempting to have ripe tomatoes for a farmer's market on June 20th, while the crop has a post-transplant DTM of 73 days. This creates a transplant date of June 20th minus 73 days, which gives us April 8th, which is very early for many climates, making greenhouse row covers or other infrastructure required to not simply keep the crop alive, but to provide enough heat for the crop to grow. Next, we determine how many days the seedling will live in 1020 flats and pots, along with how many days germination alone will require. In conclusion, it required 117 days, or roughly 4 months of grow time, in order to produce a crop for market, seeding late February and harvesting your first tomatoes mid-June. Feel free to pause this slide and read the text for a greater depth of detail. Here is an organized list of the following example, showing from start to finish the amount of days the plant goes through its life cycle. Keep in mind that this was for a single type of tomato, while many farmers grow 30 or more species, never mind growing several cultivars of each species. In a future video, I will share my Google Sheets document, which is similar to Excel, in which this planning can become as easy as plugging in some numbers. I know that covered a lot, and I want to do my best to break down each of these slides in greater detail in the future. For now, the best you can do is proper planning to prevent poor performance. I hope you enjoyed this death by PowerPoint, and until next time, grow some veg.